Hey everyone, Eric Watson here, freelance writer, player of games, writer of words, recorder of videos, and tabletop role-playing aficionado. Welcome to another DM's Guild review, my written and video view series. We take a look at the adventures and supplemental material at the Dungeon Masters Guild website. For this video, I'll be reviewing the Tier 1 adventure Rescue at Brightwell, designed by Matthew Wulf for Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition. Review copy has been provided for the purposes of this review. If you enjoy my videos, consider using my affiliate links if you're online shopping, and supporting me via patreon.com/RogueWatson. Shoutouts to Platinum patrons Joe, Will, Tiny Dancer, Manuel, Wizard, Princess, Christopher, Star, Loverly, Thomas, L-Dogs92, Ian, James, Captain Mike, and Jeremy. And gold patrons RPG Papercrafts, Charming Grenade, Pretty Boy, and Yuma, Marcos did Vicente, Gilberto, Adam, Dizard Lounge, Sam, Arash, Limpy Spuds, Jerome, Fatboy619, Scalenia, Nick, and Farty McButterpants. Thank you all very much for your support. So what is a military-themed campaign? I'm picturing like a war movie plot, where basically the adventure takes place in a setting in which at least two forces are openly hostile and battling each other. Which I think would be a really cool premise for a D&D campaign. I know Eberron takes place in a Cold War situation, which is basically the period after hostilities have ceased, but now everybody's kind of spying and still, coldly hostile to each other. But I haven't explored what it would be like. A lot of JRPGs use that premise, where it's like different countries at war with each other, and that's kind of a neat little backdrop for an adventure, to where you're not even necessarily a major player on either side. You're just that's just the backdrop of the adventure. For this adventure, which is designed for levels 3 or 4, technically not advertised as a one-shot, but I think could definitely be used as a one-shot. It's very short. I think it's under 20 pages. You are soldiers on one of the sides, but for the adventure hook, you could either be pro your side, what is it? The Balford versus the Peldrodrin are the two, which I don't know, super deep into Forgotten Realms lore, but as far as I'm aware, I don't think this uses any official. In fact, it even says if you want to put this in the Forgotten Realms, here's where you put this. So as an aside, if you're not using any of the Forgotten Realms tools, this is advice to creators. Think really hard if you actually want to publish on the DM's Guild. Think if that's worth. I mean, I get that you're going to get more eyeballs probably if you publish on the DM's Guild, but try to weigh if that's worth that hefty 50% royalty, because if you're not using the tools, that's kind of why you're publishing on the DM's Guild. You're using, Waterdeep, or you're using certain characters or areas or monsters that you can only. Whereas here, it's literally all like guards and like generic like NPC stat box. It's very much kind of a low magic scenario. So I just felt like, and I feel that way about some adventures more than others, but this one especially is like, oh, this could easily, like, technically not have anything to do with the Forgotten Realms, which is a nice modular quality to have, because I know a lot of folks don't, they've got their own homebrew world or whatever. But I just want to throw that out there, that you don't feel like you have to publish on the DM's Guild if you're not actually using any of that stuff. So anyway, for your adventure hooks, you can either be part of that side, or you could be sympathizers for the other side, which could definitely color how you're going to treat this scenario. Or you could just be basically caught in the middle, and you've been conscripted as mercenaries. You don't really care about the war. So that's pretty much the adventure hooks are, you're still part of you start the adventure already as soldiers, part of a unit, but the adventure hook basically just determines where your character's loyalties and motivations lie, which is, I think, a good way of developing this into a one-shot, even though it's designed for 3rd or 4th level. I mean, you could just fire up, as long as you're not completely new players. I think anybody could pick up a 3rd or 4th level character and go from there. And I love that we use in medias res. We start off in the middle of an exciting moment. We're in the middle of the action. So there's no, you got to go to the town. You got to pick up the quest giver. Here's the captain giving you the mission. You basically get that as a just a background information the DM tells you, and then you start off on your mission, and it basically combat begins right away, which I think is a really fun, cool start. I would love for more D&D adventures and campaigns to use exciting introductions rather than the tried and true, first you got to pick up the quest, then you got to go do the quest. I really like the idea of like, hey, here's your scenario. You've already been given this mission. you've already accepted it. We're going to basically hand wave all that crap because you want to play the game. And we're immediately going to start basically in the forest. Your commanding officer is leading you to rescue this other soldier who has been spying on the enemy. However, that soldier has been captured. They have valuable intel. Our job is to go rescue them. And, of course, the commanding soldier is killed in an ambush by not even enemy forces, just opportunistic goblins and hobgoblins, basically. He takes a... Which, I love this thing about D&D rules kind of go out the window when it comes to killing NPCs, because presumably this captain would be at least equivalent to the players in terms of power. And literally, it's written where he just takes a crossbow bolt to the net, which, okay, maybe that's a crit, but still, how much damage is that going to do? That's just kind of a funny aside. I'm not going to knock the adventure for doing it that way, but it's just funny that, like, well, wait, how many hit points did that guy have? He goes down after one crossbow bolt. And, depending on the DM, NPCs don't roll death saves or anything. They're just down. So he's supposed to die. The players survive this ambush, and they continue on to Brightwell. They can battle another patrol. They can follow them. They can kind of handle that however they wish. And we get to the actual town, which is... Town probably is too big of a word, and it literally says hamlet of Brightwell. And here is where, we start off linearly. We're going to Brightwell. Here's where the adventure actually opens up a little bit, despite how short it is and how relatively simple the plot structure is. The players are given several opportunities, first on how to get into the town. So this is an occupied town by the enemy. It is not an enemy fortress. It is not an enemy headquarters or base. It is just a neutral town that has been occupied by a military force, which has a lot of, repercussions about that. So the townsfolk are not happy about their situation, and the players can use that to their advantage. Now, the town is guarded, although it's not, crawling with enemy forces, but there's enough to where if the players were to fight things head on, it would probably not go well with them, but at 3rd or 4th level, players are probably getting, strong enough. And I think this is a really sweet spot to do this adventure, too. That's a good level to pick. And there are a couple NPCs the players can work with, one of whom is an opportunistic, not kind of a spy, but really, he says opportunist willing to provide information and services to the highest bidder. Basically, he will work with the players, but he will also betray the players the first opportunity, Rickard. And then there are 2 other town NPCs the players can work with. The Violet, the town's blacksmith, who's a goblin. I like that. And then the Dragonborn leader of the town, Elder Kendra. Lieutenant Silver is the leader of the occupying force. So that's the important NPCs here. And the players can choose to either climb over the walls. They've constructed these 15-foot tall palisades all around the town. They can try to talk their way in using deception checks. Or they could just try to sneak in under cover of darkness, kind of anticipate where the guard shifts are going to be and all that. And the adventure does a good job of kind of explaining all those different avenues for the players to use. And it's designed to be a heist mission. You're not really designed to just wage war, even though it says military-themed campaign. It kind of just colors the fact that you're soldiers with a mission. Doesn't really necessarily mean you are, storming the beaches of Normandy here. And in fact, you are meant to be, behind enemy lines. You're stealthing. You're using all the tools you've got rather than open warfare. Although, thankfully, the adventure does include, hey, if something has gone terribly wrong and the enemy has sounded the alarm, or if your players just want to go guns blazing, they certainly can. And here is how that plays out. The players can stop by any of these important areas and talk to the townsfolk or get some more information. The main thing to learn is the fact that townsfolk are not happy about their situation, and they are literally days away from gathering together their meager pitchforks and trying to attack the occupying force, because the occupying enemy has taken over their temple, which they do not like that at all. And that's where literally the soldiers have laid out their barracks and stuff inside the temple, which is blasphemous. There's an interesting little side plot here where it turns out this area is important because they've discovered a diamond deposit deep under the actual Brightwell. The whole war is being fought over diamonds, apparently. That's kind of the important thing that the spy has learned. So that's the important information that you are looking for. We do get maps, if you notice. We're getting maps. These are obviously embedded in the PDF, but we are given these as separate grid and non-grid, as well as DM and player version maps in a separate zip file. Super thumbs up for that. I'm always excited to get my maps. I mean, they're not necessarily like gorgeous map designs, but they are full color. They are detailed. They're, everything that I want. And we are given that for all the important encounter areas. You can use, obviously, the forest map for the beginning encounters. We get a nice little town map, which is important because the players are going around to different areas in the town, talking to those NPCs, gathering information, probably spying on the temple, trying to figure out, what those guard shifts are like. There's no other real side entrances, but they could maybe climb up and go down the chimney if they wanted to. They can use different distraction methods, either by talking to the NPCs or figuring out that this... I'm trying to say like a coup, but it's not really. Just an uprising, a revolt by the citizens to storm the temple. They could wait for that as a distraction, which is kind of a dark way of doing it because it even mentions the fact that obviously the soldiers, the townsfolk are no match for the soldiers, and they will be put down. And the elder speaker publicly executed. Like, it gets pretty dark, and the players could step in if they wanted to after they complete the mission. So I like that we're given a lot of methods for there. There's even a fun thing where if they manage to separate one of the soldiers, they can interrogate the soldier and learn more information. I like that we're given all these options, and I didn't expect that necessarily with a military-themed campaign. I expected more just, I guess, on the mission, fighting things, the whole time. Instead of we're basically in the town talking to people, hopefully talking to people, gathering information, stealthing. It really is more of a heist than a military-themed campaign almost, with the caveat that you've all got this mission to save this person. The one complaint I have is that it's just kind of simple and straightforward, which I guess isn't necessarily a bad thing, but I think what this adventure lacks is that D&D element. The extra seasoning, the flavor that would make this a little more interesting. Like, there's no real hiccups in the plot or story. Like, what you see is what you get when you find that this military force has captured this spy and you have to rescue him. That's it. That's what you have to do. And granted, you've got different ways of doing that. But I was just expecting some kind of twist. Like, okay, maybe the spy discovered that there's some kind of magic thing under this town or the well, or the lieutenant is a werebore in disguise, or there's just they're manufacturing some kind of more powerful poison or weapon, like something a little more interesting, I guess. And it doesn't really have that. And and like I said, it feels like you could almost not even have this in a D&D world. This could be like Game of Thrones or something. Not that I don't like Game of Thrones, but in terms of very low magic and just not a whole lot of interesting little twists happening, other than the fact that I guess the townsfolk are like goblins and dragonborn and things. But it doesn't really get any more interesting than that. I think it executes on its premise very well, which is your goal is to save this soldier, and and the adventure lays out, okay, here's the patrols, here's the guards, here's what's going to happen in 2 days with the revolt, here's what the players can learn from all these things. It does the heist stuff very, very well. It just kind of lacks that extra element to make this just a bit more of a twist. Something happening at the end, basically, where I was like, oh, this takes it to a whole new level. It just never quite gets to that level. So that's a little bit of a disappointment there, but I think it executes on what it's trying to do with providing a very simple, I guess, military-themed campaign. I would call it more of a heist. Well, I guess it does mention heist, doesn't it? Is it military-themed? Yeah, military-themed heist. Okay. I would agree with that for the most part. And I like, I like the beginning. I like that we're given all the options for players on how they want to execute their plans, and they can gather more information. There's a nice epilogue where the players, obviously, if they rescue both the person they're supposed to rescue and get the information from him, then that's the best ending. The second best ending is if the person trying to rescue dies, but they still get the information, because that's ultimately what's important, is the spy's information. Then it's the second best ending, and then they could outright fail, but in which case they're still like, oh, well, at least you tried, basically, because you're still, it's weird. The epilogue is like, well, at least you survived the mission, so maybe we've got some more use for you there. But I think it could be a decent one shot, or just as part of I don't know how you'd work it out if you're party just happen to be part of this military unit. I think you'd have to make this a one shot, if not part of a bigger campaign. I would like to see the designer design. I would like to see this author design a larger military themed campaign, because I do really like that idea of having that backdrop of a war going on and the players being on one side, but maybe and have it be where neither side are the good guys, which is pretty much always the case in war, or atrocities and all these things happening, and just war is hell is always the theme. And I think there's a lot you can do there, but don't lose sight of the fantasy theme. I think there's you don't have to just insert random shit for just my sake, but I think there's some twists you can put in there to make things a little bit more interesting and add that nice little D&D flavoring, and by the way, I like that this doesn't involve like a dungeon crawl. There's no dungeon crawl here whatsoever, which I love my dungeon crawls, and the fact that I enjoy this adventure is really saying something. And I don't need them to insert that just to check that box off, but some kind of extra twist in there, some kind of magic item, or somebody's hidden creature of some kind, or some extra little bit would have, I think, gone a really long way towards making this a more memorable adventure. All right, let's go over my pros and cons for Rescue at Brightwell. Pro: exciting start with a deadly ambush. I wish more adventures started off in the middle of the action instead of just the usual, okay, you gotta go get your mission and then we get to talk to them and then we've got all this before we go on. It helps move things along and get things going. And I love the fact that we're starting off with okay, here you go, you're in the forest, your commander's leading you to go rescue your person, and then he gets a crossbow bolt in the neck. Roll for initiative. That's a cool start. Pro: multiple paths and avenues for the party to succeed in their mission, including socially, stealthily, and forcibly. Even though it's a very short adventure, the designer has given several different paths to, there's still an ultimate outcome. You still have a mission, so the story is not necessarily going to change from that, but how you get there is definitely going to change. And there are multiple ways the players can try to figure that out, depending on how much information they gather, which NPCs they like to talk to, what kind of stealth things they've got set up. All of that can adapt and change depending on how they run things, and I think that's a great way of designing the adventure. And pro, of course, full color battle maps for every encounter, as well as separate in the zip file versions for players and DMs. And my only con is I just find the adventures a little too short and simple. It does what it says on the tin. It is a rescue at Brightwell, but I just think it lacks some kind of extra either twist element at the end or something. I don't necessarily need like a boss fight or a dungeon crawl or anything, but something else that would have just made the story a little bit more interesting rather than just go save the person and get out. Final verdict: Rescue at Brightwell executes on a relatively simple premise while granting the player character soldiers a satisfying amount of freedom and choices. Thank you to everyone for watching this video review. You can see my written review at roguewatson.com. You can support my work at patreon.com/roguewatson, and you can follow our own D&D adventures here on my YouTube channel. Thank you.